This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. So close for Aston Villa at 2-0 down, 5-1 on aggregate. How many people started focusing on their second screen or just turned their TV off and did something more important instead? But then Tielemans, McGinn, Konsa and Villa were so close to an incredible comeback. Rashford was brilliant. Perhaps he shouldn't have been taken off. Asensio had a great chance. Konsa missed a header. Donnarumma made a couple of great saves. But ultimately it was heroic defeat. So does this mean PSG are still favourites? Will Arsenal, brackets Real Madrid, take heart from all of that? Same question for Barcelona, being talked up after smashing Dortmund in the first leg. They suffered in Germany. Guirassy had a markedly better game, a hat-trick, but much like Villa, they just had too much to do from last week. Also today we'll touch on tonight's quarterfinals, try and remember Monday Night Football, talk the League 2 title race, and Barry's been invited to a European wedding. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hello. Yeah, I love a European wedding. I've been to one in Granada, I've been to one in Greece, and they were two of the better weddings I've attended.
All right, well, we'll find out if you're going to this one. Lars Sivertsen, hello.
Hello.
And from the Racing Post, Mark Langdon, welcome.
Hi, Max. I got married in Europe, so yeah.
Yes.
I didn't invite Barry, but I don't think I knew him at the time.
Okay. Would you have? If you got married today, would we all make the guest list?
You'd be invited. Why not? It was
Okay.
a heavy 2 weeks in Paphos. We'll put it that way. There's about 50 of us.
So much meat. Anyway, let's start at Villa Park. Villa 3, PSG 2. PSG go through 5-4 in aggregate. Barry, what an almighty effort from Aston Villa.
Yeah, it was tremendous. As you alluded to in your intro, it looked like it was going to be all over with about when PSG went 2-0 up and 5-1 up on aggregate. And then we got another near capitulation from the French champions. Villa were absolutely superb. News of this may not have reached Australia, Max, but the bin men of Birmingham are currently on strike and have been for quite a few weeks. So I had this image in my head, possibly of the PSG team coach going through the streets on its way to Villa Park with just mountains of stuffed polyethylene refuse sacks, making the players go, what the hell is going on here? What's this smell? Why are there rats everywhere? I don't know if that affected their performance or not, but they really let Villa back into the game, and I don't think they had any real need to. It was over at 5-1, or it certainly should have been, but whether it was a bit of big game inexperience from PSG or ghosts of capitulations past coming back to haunt them, they lost control of a game that they shouldn't have. Their midfield disappeared. Their full-backs kept bombing forward when they had no need to. And Aston Villa took full advantage of this. Marcus Rashford was brilliant. Youri Tielemans was brilliant. John McGinn was a real captain's performance and goal from him. And sadly, they didn't do quite enough, due in no small part to some... I mean, they could have scored 6 or 7 goals in that second half. Donnarumma had to make some fine saves. There was a bit of poor finishing from various Villa players, but what an effort, and they should be very proud of themselves.
Yeah, it was interesting, Lars, because Villa needed to start this game quickly, and they did. And I thought for 10 minutes they were absolutely brilliant, and they fed off the noise. And then PSG scored, and you went, But they kept going, and then PSG scored again, and you thought, hang on, this PSG side are just masters, right? Because it looked like Villa were on top. So to go from that moment to what Villa created, I just think is so impressive.
Yeah, no, it is. I did think from the first minute, tactically the situation was not good for Villa, because if you look at what makes this PSG team good, one of the big things is the sheer amount of speed they have in the team. It's something we've discussed earlier on the pod. It's just one of the quickest teams I can remember seeing just across the board. They're just absolute sprinters out there. So ending up going even more goals behind and having to throw caution to the wind is a really unpleasant situation to be in, because you can always get done on the counter. But I guess it must have been an almighty talk at halftime. I'm not sure, like, if Unai Emery really does the big team talks. He's always struck me more as like a technical do this and that guy. But certainly they came out in the second half, and there was a sense of like really nothing to lose at this point. You might as well go for it. I'm kind of torn between thinking, is this sort of residual psychological scar tissue from PSG from knowing that they are the team that screw these things up? Maybe that is something that's in the back of their minds. There was this great stat going into the game that 7 times PSG have been two goals up or more in the Champions League second leg, ahead of a Champions League second leg, and 3 of them they threw away. Like almost half of the time they've messed it up, which is extraordinary given what an advantage that should be. This is a different PSG team, but you wonder if there's an awareness of that. But I also, maybe paradoxically, I also wonder if they got a little complacent in the second half. I think that there was kind of strolling the ball around, and playing some casual and loose passes. You already mentioned Barry's mentioned the fullbacks who were flying forward when they really didn't need to. So maybe that was what was going on. But certainly Villa, the way they upped the tempo. Now I'm very happy for Marcus Rashford, who sort of justified his place very much in the second half, because I nearly tweeted something slightly mean about him in the first half, because I just kind of surprised that Ollie Watkins gets dropped for this. And I kind of felt really sad for Ollie Watkins. He's a player who's kind of fought his way up from League Two, and he's done more than most to put Villa in the Champions League. And for him to be dropped in favour of a lone player who's scored 1 goal in 8 in the league so far, it seems very harsh. And then for the first PSG goal, when Rashford just kind of casually loses the ball and makes no effort to win it back at all, he just kind of looks to the heavens. If I'm Ollie Watkins, I'm quite annoyed at that point. But you have to say in the second half, Rashford had a spell when he was absolutely brilliant and showed, I guess, why someone like Emery is so keen to try to get him back to his former levels, because at his best, he is very good.
And actually, Mark, leading on from that, most of the talk afterwards is, should Emery have kept Rashford on and played 2 up front, which I feel is a bit harsh, because if Asensio scores that goal, or Konsa connects with that header, or that Matson volley, Pacho isn't in the perfect position to block it, then it's an excellent change, But I don't know what you think, because Rashford was playing really well.
He was playing really well. I was surprised he was taken off when he was, because Villa were really on top at that moment, and you can disrupt the team by making the changes, and I don't think they necessarily got better for the substitutions. But I would have disagreed with anyone that said that Villa should have gone for it any more than they did and sort of been more attacking, because if you lose control of midfield against Paris Saint-Germain, then you just won't get the ball back anyway. So I sort of felt their second half performance had everything really, in terms of the discipline required to chase the game in almost like a patient way, but feeding off the crowd at moments. And in the first half, maybe they were just a touch too rash in the way that they went for it, and were eventually made to pay. But I'd argue against sort of being critical of Emery's substitutions. I think more often than not, he gets it right, and it's hard not to feel sorry for him as he's sort of sunk to the floor when Matson's brilliant shot. I mean, that was definitely going in to the bottom corner, was blocked just before it could get there. So it's been a great campaign for Villa. I remember sort of being, I think, maybe on the first pod when their fans were criticising the club for the expensive ticket prices for the Champions League games, and felt like it wasn't necessarily all pulling in the same direction. You just saw from the reaction after the game, even in defeat, that this is a club where everybody feels like they're pulling in the right direction, and I think that will be the kind of the inspiration required to finish in the top 5. You won't want to sort of drop out of the Champions League having had some of the nights that they've already experienced, albeit in defeat. And to just pick up on something that Lars said, Ousmane Dembele after the game said we thought we'd won it at 5-1, and there was maybe just a lax attitude from PSG that wasn't there when they defended so well at Anfield.
And actually, a couple of weeks ago, they played Dunkirk in the French Cup, and they went 2-0 down, like, very early in the game before they kind of switched back on and won 4-2. Like, I guess it's hard not for a team like that to have the sort of tendency towards complacency, just because they are so much better than almost every team they play domestically. So, like, the number of games a year where they genuinely get tested is it just doesn't happen that often for them. So I guess it's a real challenge for Luis Enrique to try to instill an attitude that even if 90% of our games we don't have to be switched on for 100% of the time, we have to do it anyway so that we're ready for the actual big games. I mean, that must be a real challenge. Now, Enrique seems like a pretty intense guy, so maybe he's the kind of manager who can actually do that. But that, coupled with the fact that it is a very young team, I guess means that sort of that possibility of complacency setting in is a flaw in this group for now.
Barry, I don't know if you have an answer to this. I didn't. I was just trying to work out how Villa scared PSG. If it was more than just vibes and atmosphere and a sort of freedom because they were behind.
I thought the atmosphere seemed quite, not until McGinn's goal went in. It was PSG fans who seemed to be making all the noise, and then that was like someone flicked a switch and the Villa faithfuls suddenly went, oh, hang on, this could happen. And I just think as each goal went in, PSG became increasingly paralysed with fear. Their midfield just disappeared. And I think this is a game PSG will learn a lot from. If they had lost, God, it could have...
What a shame, eh?
This team, we talk to the point of tedium about how it's so different from the circus of the Mbappe, Neymar,
Messi's the one, yes.
Lionel Messi era. Yeah, it's very easy to forget old Leo. So if they had suffered the same sort of catastrophic defeat and capitulation as those boys, who knows how long it would take them to recover, if they would ever recover from it. But I think this will be a huge learning experience for them. And they deserve credit, but they could have lost, very easily. Villa had the chances to win it.
And so there are two things you take from it, Mark, and you alluded to one, which is Villa have got a taste for this, right? They have to get back into it just to get a consistency about it. And on the other side of it is PSG are more fallible now than they were after the first leg. Same can be said for Barca. We'll get to that in part 2. If you are Arsenal or brackets Real Madrid when they remontada it tomorrow or tonight rather, you will look at PSG and go, you really can get at them.
You can get at them, and they've conceded a lot of goals in the Champions League. Even when they beat City, they came from behind, and that wasn't, as we come to find out, wasn't a vintage City side. Liverpool had them on the ropes in the second leg at Anfield at times, and so did Villa. I think though we can sometimes, because there's a recency bias to like that second half. PSG were the better team than Villa for 3 of the 4 halves, in total, and deserved to go through, despite the fact that it got nervy for them. I agree that I think they will learn from it, in terms of complacency and taking their foot off the gas, which definitely happened at 5-1. And there were even times when they started to get selfish, and Dembele was shooting when there were easier passes. Doué made a brilliant run, and he just refused to pass to him. And we hadn't seen that really from Paris Saint-Germain too often in the last few months. So maybe it was just a slight reality check that they might need as they go on deeper into the competition. And they are flawed. I mean, they're not, this is not a team that people were talking about 8 months ago as being the best in Europe. So you can get at them, but if you try to get at them, they'll also hurt you going the other way.
I would slightly disagree with Mark insofar as I think PSG's problem last night was that they didn't take their foot off the gas. They kept surging forward. They kept trying to score, and they turned the match into something of a basketball game, whereas I think they should have just gone, look, we've won this. There's no need to attack. Just let them come at us. But then that's kind of what Barcelona did against Dortmund, and they almost came unstuck as well.
Yeah, I felt, Barry, that the sort of it's more just maybe in midfield that the attitude to go and press and win the ball back had kind of like there was times in that second half when Villa were running sort of all over them in midfield, and I think that will have annoyed Luis Enrique, who there's a viral clip of him. I think it's last season telling Kylian Mbappe all the things he does wrong for the team and how he needs to work much harder out of possession. And I felt that there were moments in that second half particularly where they weren't working as hard out of possession as we have seen them maybe at other times. That's sort of what I was trying to get at anyway.
It is funny that, because I remember seeing the president, the big cheese at Paris Saint-Germain. I remember some quotes from him saying, everything has to change. Players has to take much more responsibility. Celebrity behavior will no longer be tolerated. Thing is, that was 2019. So he's been like, and then they went forth and sort of signed Lionel Messi and Sergio Ramos and what have you. It's like this club has been trying for so long to change what they became, and for a while it was like they just couldn't help themselves. They wanted to stop signing superstars, but they just kept like putting dessert trolleys of superstars in front of them, and they were like, yeah, that cake looks nice. But now they have actually built a team that makes more sense, but there's still that sort of little thing. And Luis Enrique, again, doesn't he do like Ironman marathons and like stuff like this? Like, I think he's a very, very intense guy. And I guess that's the kind of dynamic at PSG. This is this very, very intense and firm and no nonsense Spanish man trying to whip this team, which just is the celebrity behavior is in their DNA, and he's probably going a little bit crazy trying to get a hold of it. But certainly this season is the best we've seen from them in terms of making sense of all that.
Barry, just a word on John McGinn. You talked about how well he played. There was just a lovely quote from him afterwards saying, look, I've never played Barcelona or Real Madrid, but PSG are the best team I've ever played. I'm getting old. He's 30 years old. I would like to play against them every week. And it is interesting, I think Lars alluded to Ollie Watkins, coming up from League Two. And, John McGinn did his, hard yards, St Mirren, Hibs, joined Villa in the Championship. And it wasn't just him. Like, Aston Villa's midfield did boss PSG for a while. And you just think, like, credit to that guy up against this team and just putting on a performance like that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a very honest player. He doesn't always play brilliantly. He was excellent last night. There was a time, I think must have been last year, since Unai Emery came to Villa, and I said on the pod that I thought McGinn was becoming one of the best midfielders in Europe, and I got absolutely slaughtered afterwards in the comments. But he more than held his own last night. He has been outstanding more or less throughout Villa's Champions League campaign, and he's one of those really honest players who absolutely maximises the talent he's been given through just sheer hard work and force of will, and fair play to him.
Yeah, they're a point off fifth in the FA Cup semi-final against Palace next weekend. So, still all to play for.
Look at where they were 2.5 years ago. They were in a relegation battle, and now they've just gone out of the Champions League quarterfinals. They're in the FA Cup semi-final and they're challenging for a top 5 place. It's a remarkable transformation that Unai Emery has performed there.
And I think they've done a great job juggling all these tournaments this season as well, because we've seen before teams who are not used to playing in the Champions League. We saw it with Newcastle, for instance. The extra burden of those games it's difficult to deal with, but here we are at like the business end of the season, and they don't look fatigued at all. Like they have a pretty deep squad. They have good options in various positions. Unai Emery has rotated a lot, and they've won now. I think it's 9 in the last 10 in all competitions. So you have a deep FA Cup run in the middle of all of that as well. So like just a really, really great job by Unai Emery and all the players.
It's a good point actually, because actually before that run of 9 and 10. We were like, this Premier League's been a bit flat, and it sort of always comes back to that idea that really we shouldn't talk about the season at all until it's finished, and then we can really judge it. It would be sort of difficult for us to justify our positions, but that's sort of one way you should potentially do it. Anyway, that'll do for part 1. In part 2, we'll do Dortmund's victory over Barcelona, but ultimate defeat. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Dortmund beat Barcelona 3-1 in Germany. How close were they, Mark? Like, really?
Probably not as close as the actual atmosphere and game felt, because watching the game, like, the crowd were really involved right from the first moment. Like, they kind of believed, and the only way they were able to to do it would be to get an early goal. And so they got the early goal, and Barcelona were definitely on the ropes at that point. But they never got to within one of taking it to extra time. And, whereas Villa kind of had that sort of last 20 minutes where they could sort of, one goal took it to extra time, Dortmund were always a bit away from that. And they had a couple of goals disallowed for offside that, again, it gets the crowd going. It makes you feel nervous. But, ultimately, they were quite a long way offside. But because now you get play on until the ball goes in. It again, I think it gives the impression of it being sort of you're more unlucky than you actually are to be offside. It was quite a long way offside. It was still an amazing effort from Dortmund. I mean, they're not at the same level as Barcelona, so to chase the game the way that they did was, I thought, really heartwarming to see. But Barcelona did not play well in this game at any stage, and it will have, I think, probably Arsenal fans slightly nervous if they were watching either of those games, because when you're so far ahead, the team just doesn't seem to play in a normal way. And Barcelona, they defend on the halfway line, but they didn't really commit to kind of the press and everything that you need to do to go with that. And it was that halfway house performance that just, it was a sort of nothing show from them, really. But, the one time it felt like they were losing control of it properly at 2-0 in the second half, that's actually when they went and scored their goal, albeit from an own goal. So they were in control enough, I think, but it wasn't a good performance from them.
I mean, that own goal, Lars, it is such a pivotal moment, isn't it? Because you just, you could see what it meant to the Barcelona players. They were like, oh, thank God for that. But it's Ben Zabani, right? He does so well to get that on target. Like, it's quite an amazing, like, it wasn't like, when a ball comes in and they go, look, the defender has to hit that because otherwise the centre forward's following up. It wasn't that. It was, how's he got that in?
He's a canny finisher, Ben Zabini. I remember him actually being played through down the other end earlier in the season and like chipping the goalkeeper in a way that was like, hang on, you're a defender. What are you doing? I wonder if this was like just for Barcelona. I don't think this, I mean, we talked about PSG still attacking too much when they didn't need to. I feel like the way that Barcelona play under Flick, they're completely unsuited to riding a lead. It's just not something that they're set up to do at all. They play with this crazy high line. They have all these exciting young attackers that keep going forward. And then you put them in the situation where it would be foolish to do that. And you end up with a really weird sort of game where they're probably not like... And Dortmund are baffling, really. Because this season, the league season, has been a mess. I think they're 8th in the Bundesliga. They've had a change of manager. They look like, I mean, there have been so many, like, just really poor performances domestically. But as we saw last season, wasn't it, when they got to the final, like, they are able to pull it together and put in performances on these big nights. It's just a real shame the first leg was that many goals, so it became almost insurmountable. So because, yeah, being a Dortmund fan must be one of the most, like, be one of the least pleasant clubs to follow in the sense, because you see enough that you believe this team should be good. It's just they're very often not.
I mean, I can think of a lot of other clubs that are harder to follow than Borussia Dortmund, but I take your point. And actually, it's worth mentioning, we didn't touch on it, but that Nuno Mendes last minute goal in Paris makes such a difference to that whole second leg, doesn't it? And the same here, right? Barcelona smashed Dortmund. There was sort of nothing they could do. We should mention Guirassy, Barry, because and I think everyone else gave him a pasting after the first leg where he had not a great game of football, and he did at least salvage some pride last night.
He certainly did. Scored a hat-trick. I mean, following his shocking performance in the first leg, I commend his bravery to try a Panenka with the penalty, or successfully pull off a Panenka. Big kahunas there from Guirassy. His second goal, I thought Ben Zabina did superbly to head the corner back across the face of goal, and he nodded home from a couple of inches out. And what was the third one?
Third was a Barca player just passed it to him.
Yes, a poor clearance straight to his feet, and he rifled it home. So he more than did his job. I thought Adeyemi played well here as well. He had a couple of reasonable chances that on another night he might have scored. And Dortmund also had, one of their players had a header from a Fabian Gross free header straight at the keeper. So they also had chances to score more goals, didn't take them. But as Marcus said, Barcelona were very poor. I don't know if it was complacency, just a collective bad day at the office, but last week we were talking about Rafinha and Lamine Yamal as potential Ballon d'Or winners. They didn't play like potential Ballon d'Or winners last night.
I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? And it's interesting because on Monday we were talking about the Premier League not being that good this year. But actually the Champions League's really delivered, Mark. And even with these games like that you thought were over, we sort of went into last night thinking, okay, there's not a lot on tonight. Like these teams, PSG and Barcelona have proved that they're fallible. I don't know how good Barcelona are, Mark, and I don't know, like Baz said, after the first leg, we were saying they could be favourites for this. I don't know what we're saying now. What am I meant to think?
Barcelona have had a hectic season themselves. They're in a tight title race, and one that they're pulling clear in. They're in the final of the Spanish Cup, and now they're through to the semi-finals of the Champions League. So they are a good side. I think Flick probably took liberties, and probably understandably, but resting Pedri, somebody that can really control the game for you in midfield and kind of just make things work probably better than most other players in Europe. I understand why he did that, because the game did look over. I see from the last couple of years, I was always anti the away goal rule, so maybe this is like just confirmation bias, but last night felt like a good advert for binning off the away goal rule, because that did allow Aston Villa to keep pushing, and had that been sort of a few years ago, it would have been just a task that would have been impossible. And like when Barcelona scored their goal, the atmosphere would have just gone completely out of that Dortmund game. But actually, they stayed with it, the crowd. Now you could argue maybe the first legs would have played out differently because teams are trying to chase away goals, but I always felt it was slightly just unfair, really, and didn't give a true reflection of sort of what football is. It made it feel more unnatural to try to score these away goals. So I think that's definitely helped. But the level of Champions League football is just so high, and when you get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, it's hard to think of. I was going to say it's hard to think of bad games, but you can't remember bad games, can you? So I'm sure there have been some, but the level of football is just fantastic. And when you've got the quality, Dortmund are struggling in the Bundesliga, but even at the weekend, they've drawn 2-2 against Bayern Munich. They've got quality players, and if they play well, they're capable of beating anyone. And I think that's what happens when you get to sort of last 8 of the Champions League. They can all beat each other.
I'm sort of conflicted about this because I think it is one of the biggest problems with modern club football, and one I don't know if there's a solution to, which is that you have the sort of top 8 in the Premier League plus a handful of clubs around Europe who can spend so much more money than everyone else. It's become very stratified. Is that the phrase? I think that's deeply unhealthy for the sport in a number of ways. But the flip side is the last couple of rounds of the Champions League are brilliant. Like when these teams actually come up against each other, it's very, very good. And it's that is the upside of that sort of problematic development.
Gita, a friend of the pod, says, is it just in our household that we despise that Barca play in white shorts? Yeah, it's totally unacceptable. And it just does not look right. Get your normal shorts back on. Okay, then we've got Real Madrid, Arsenal. It's funny, isn't it, Baz? Like at full time in that game, you're like, Arsenal are through. And as every minute has gone by, I don't know. I just start to think, oh, maybe are they? And then, Jude Bellingham's in a press conference going, yeah, I mean, it's obviously on. And that just shows how good we are. They haven't played. Like they played and they got hammered. And yet I feel like they're more confident than Arsenal going into this game.
Yeah, Bellingham said everyone thinks it's nailed on that we'll come back and win. After the Arsenal 3-0 win last week, I was adamant this is done. And I keep thinking about, Jonathan Wilson has said a few times on this podcast that any hurdle that's put in front of Arsenal, they manage to trip over it. And I keep thinking about that comment and going, no, they can't mess this up. But I didn't give Villa a hope in hell last night. I didn't give Dortmund a hope in hell. They both gave their opponents plenty to think about. I think if Real Madrid are to get back in this game, Fede Valverde played right back last week. I think he has to play in midfield. So that would mean Luis Vázquez playing right back. He's not as good as Valverde, but needs must. And I suppose you need a performance from Kylian Mbappe, who owes Real Madrid one. after all the shenanigans that surrounded his move and after his act of thuggery at the weekend, which he only got a 1-game ban for, interestingly. But
1-game ban for that, crikey. What do you have to do to get a 2-game ban? You have to kill someone.
the option was open for him to get a 3-game ban, and he could have got more. But yeah, he only got 1. So that doesn't really add grist to the mill of
No, it doesn't.
the anti-Madrid referee conspiracy theory.
Without wanting to use a cliche here, Mark, first goal is crucial, isn't it, Clive?
1-0 at half time, that's all. If you can just be leading at half time, then you've got 45 minutes to score 2 goals. That doesn't feel like it's out of the equation, does it? If you get one sort of, in the next 30 minutes, you've got sort of 10, 15 minutes to sort of have a go at them. I think that's how Madrid will play it. I don't think that they'll panic by the situation. They have come back from these moments before, and just be winning at half time. I think that would be sort of Ancelotti's sort of message. You haven't got to go crazy here. And if Arsenal can beat Real Madrid 3-0, then Real Madrid can beat Arsenal 3-0. That's how they'll be sort of thinking about it. I thought Arteta gave a good press conference. I tend to think it's overrated, kind of, what you're saying pre-game, but he didn't hide from the fact that Real Madrid have this record, and I do believe some managers would pretend that it's not there, and he sort of admitted to the fact that Madrid are a good side and they're capable of doing it. Let's remember though that Aston Villa and Dortmund did fall short, and it can be sort of this heroic defeat kind of is how I think the game will go. I can see it getting nervous at times for Arsenal, but that Madrid defence I think will concede to Arsenal, and like 1 goal should be enough to go through, I think.
Yeah, Lars, if you're Arsenal, how do you? Because we've looked at how PSG and Barcelona approached having a lead. How do Arsenal approach this?
Well, they have to go forward, and they should take comfort in the thing Mark Langdon just said about how Real Madrid are not all themselves in the defensive part of the team, and you just kind of you can't sit back and wait for them to come at you, I think, because they will, and they have players who are very good on the ball. What Real Madrid have, which is a challenge for them, is that they've basically inherited Paris Saint-Germain's problem in terms of having being a little bit superstar heavy. Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. are incredible footballers, and they're 2 of the best players in the world, possibly the 2 best players in the world, I think, if you ask people. But neither of them do a heck of a lot without the ball, right? So you have the thing when Real Madrid don't have possession, they're at least 1, possibly 2 men down compared to more balanced teams. This is a big game for those 2, actually, because nobody doubts that they can do incredible things in terms of dribbling people and running and shooting and all that. But they are going to have to put a shift in off the ball to win it back, because Arsenal, I guess they'll want to take if you give Arsenal an opportunity to pass the ball around, take the sting out of it. Arsenal have got the best defensive record in the Premier League this season. Like, it's not been a great season for Arsenal, but defensively they're still brilliant. And Real Madrid, if they're going to really go at them, you're going to need those 2 to actually run off the ball a bit. I reckon Ancelotti, I wonder if he's had this conversation. I wonder if he sat down with them and said, guys, I know that you don't like chasing the ball too much. This is not your vibe. It's not something, but a couple of games a year, you're gonna have to do it, and this is certainly one of those games. I'll be watching them 2 very, very closely here.
Yeah, well, look, interesting preview for those who listened to this before that game, and interesting to see if any of it made sense to those of you listening after that game. We'll obviously cover that and into Bayern in tomorrow's pod. Lars, we've had a lot of people asking us about Bodo Glimt, who beat Lazio 2-0 in the home leg of the Europa League quarter-final. Second leg is on Thursday. Are they dark horses for the whole thing? Were you surprised by that victory, or are they very good at home, not so good away?
I definitely think, aside from the aforementioned sort of top 8 in the Premier League and the biggest clubs around Europe, I think they can beat pretty much anyone else at home, especially like in the winter half of the year when it's cold and unpleasant up there. Like the pitch, I mean, they cleared it for the game, obviously, but like on the morning of the game, it was full of snow. Like, it was snowed in. I think the lads from Lazio did not enjoy their visit to the Arctic Circle. And they are a remarkable story. They're one of very, very few like genuine sort of feel-good stories in modern sort of European club football, because it's actually not that many years ago, they were in the second tier in Norway, and they've kind of worked their way up. not through massive cash injections from dubious sources, but by having a very clear footballing idea through signing players. And they have increasingly, as they've been successful in Europe and as they've made some big sales, they do have some money by Norwegian contexts, but they don't sign like big names, relatively speaking, in Scandinavia. They look out and they go out and they find players who suit their philosophy on the pitch, who suit the mentality they want to have off the pitch. And it's a very small place, Bodo. I think it's a place where players can just completely focus on what they're doing. You can't really get lost in the nightlife at Bodo. Like if you're a player for the team and you go out, the entire
the
town
bright
will know
lights
about
of
it.
Bodo
So it's it doesn't really work. Like if you want to do the Sir Alex Ferguson thing and roam around the bars trying to find your players, like in Bodo, that would be a very quick trip.
Are we saying Ben Mee will not be signing for Bodo Glimt anytime soon?
But yeah, it's a wonderful story, and they're absolutely remarkable. I'm delighted that they've taken another big European scalp, and yet you're right in saying it's going to be harder for them in the away leg, but I absolutely think they're capable of doing it.
All right then, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll begin with Bournemouth beating Fulham in the Premier League. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Bournemouth beat Fulham 1-0. Antoine Semenyo scoring after 53 seconds. It was a nice finish. An abject defending from Fulham, who just sort of hadn't really started the game. Bournemouth's first win in the Premier League since the 15th of February moves them up to 8th, 6 points behind Villa in 7th. Bournemouth owner Bill Foley is scheduled to fly to England this week, with the club intending to open formal talks with boss Andoni Iraola over a new contract amid interest from Spurs. Quite a Spursy pod we have. I mean that in terms of people who like Spurs, not a pod that will just give you pain and ultimately.
There's still time. Collapse spectacularly towards the end. We were on track for a good pod, and then something went terribly wrong.
Exactly.
That could still happen, Max.
Yeah.
There's still time for this.
Anyway, the question is, obviously, Iraola has been brilliant for Bournemouth. They would love to keep him. Spurs have Frankfurt on Thursday. They were good in the home leg, but didn't win. Mark, I'll go to you first as a season ticket holder. Who would you rather? Ange, Iraola, Marco Silva, or Thomas Frank?
Of them four, Iraola, I've given up on managers. I don't, there've been Pochettino, Conte and Mourinho, Nuno. I've given up on sort of any of them making that much difference. Really, I think Iraola's had a fantastic season with Bournemouth. I would question his judgment if he jumped ship to Spurs. So if he's got anything about him, I think he'll wait for something that's slightly better. Bournemouth are a very well run club. I can see why he might want to stay there one more year and see if there are any other opportunities that become available. I'm thinking maybe Chelsea, for instance. Maresca feels like he's under a slight bit of pressure now, and I also think it's really unfair that we talking about these managers in that way, really, because Bournemouth, they're their own team. They're playing well, and as soon as things start to go well, it's like, where's the left back going? Where's the centre back going? The manager's got to.
But apart from Real Madrid, that's just the pecking order of football. We're all in it somewhere, aren't we?
Of those four, Max, Iraola would be the one, just because I can just feel the negative vibes around the place if Marco Silva or Thomas Frank get it. Now, that's not necessarily judgment on either of them two, both done very well in the Premier League. But sort of speaking to my fellow Tottenham fans, there's not many that are going, I'd love to see Marco Silva here, or please give us Thomas Frank. There's not that, and nobody's saying stick with Ange either. So of those four, it would be Iraola. But I've sort of given up.
I love that you can't have any respect for any manager who's stupid enough to take the job.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's catch-22, isn't it? If they do come, you've got to question their judgment. So anyone who does come isn't the right person. Yes, Lars?
Can I just say, those friends of Mark Langdon who reckon Tottenham are too good for Marco Silva, do they want a big lame like Jose Mourinho or Antonio Conte? Is this kind of what we're looking at here? Because I feel like we've been down this road. I also, as much as I admire Mark Langdon on every level. I have to say, watching Tottenham this season and then remembering where Tottenham were 10 years ago, my conclusion is not that managers don't matter. I've had a very, very different feeling, I have to say, given that. If I was Andoni Iraola, I would hang back a bit because, yeah, Tottenham, but also I'm interested to see what happens at Man United this summer, and I'm interested to see what happens at Chelsea this summer. I think there are a couple of slightly more lucrative jobs that might come up for him if he just kind of hang tight.
And actually, 8th quite possibly will get them into the Conference League, Bournemouth, if both Newcastle and the winners of the FA Cup finish inside the top 7. So what is it? Villa, Palace, Forest and City. So it's only if Palace won the FA Cup, it would mean 8th didn't get Europe. So Bournemouth in a good position to get Conference League football. Newcastle at home to Crystal Palace tonight. Eddie Howe will miss at least 2 more games as he recovers from pneumonia. He issued a statement on the club's website. Huge thank you to everyone connected with Newcastle United and the wider football community for your messages and warm wishes. They've meant a lot to me and my family. I also want to pay tribute to our incredible NHS and the hospital staff who've treated me. I'm immensely grateful for the specialist care I'm receiving, and after a period of recovery, I look forward to being back as soon as possible. A correction from the Premier League from Monday, where Khan says Mo Salah's corner for Virgil van Dijk's winning header was even more impressive than Max suggested on Football Weekly, given that Mo Salah doesn't take corners and was on the bench at the time, having been subbed off with 10 minutes to go. I don't know where I got that from. Honestly, I watched it. I was taking notes. I'm tired. It's okay. In the Championship, Hull got a late equaliser against Coventry on Monday night. Coventry 6th on 63 points. 3 points clear of West Brom, Middlesbrough and Millwall, all on 60. In League 2 last night, Salford won, Doncaster won. Donny moved level on points with Walsall in 3rd. 4 games to go, 4 points between 1st and 4th. Mark, you wanted to talk about the League 2 title race.
Yeah, I do, because it feels like the league that nobody wants to win. Port Vale are now the team that are on a good run. Bradford, as you discussed, on the pod on Monday, lost 5-4 in dramatic circumstances. Walsall barely won since Christmas. Doncaster are now just feels like they're drawing every single game at the moment. So, it's sort of...
Sorry, I think last time I looked at the League 2 table, Walsall were about 25 points clear at the top.
Yeah, I don't think they've won since then, Barry, since you last lost. They lost their sort of star striker who was on loan in January, and such was their buffer that they are still in the top 3. I was watching this Salford v Doncaster game. I had 3 games on the go last night, and it started off, as the second commentary game, but because of events elsewhere, I had to switch Dave Farrer off, as good as he is as a commentator, and just sort of keep an eye on it. But a result that did little for either team. Salford were pushing to try to get into the top 7. They wanted the win. Doncaster needed the win. They've got a really hard schedule for their remaining games, but neither were able to. So, Walsall might end up sort of getting automatic promotion, even if they don't win another game between now and the end of the season, although that's pushing it a bit.
I looked this up very briefly now. Walsall have won 2 in the last 17. And they're still in an automatic promotion. I mean, we talk about Liverpool limping across the line in the Premier League. I mean, this is some next level limping.
That's it. We should just be doing League 2 weekly from now on. As we all expected, Luka Modric has taken part ownership of Swansea City. Imagine him, Leon Britton and Joe Allen in a triangle. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Swansea City is delighted to announce that Ballon d'Or winner Luka Modric has joined the club as an investor and co-owner. Luka's investment in the club is an endorsement of the club's ambition and vision. He'll play a key role in helping the club garner global attention and progress both on and off the pitch. Luka Modric said in a statement, definitely written by him and not somebody else. Swansea has a strong identity, an incredible fan base, and the ambition to compete at the highest level. Playing at the highest level, I believe I can provide my experience to the club. My goal is to support the club's growth in a positive way and to help build an exciting future. I mean, it is great, Barry, that Luka Modric is doing that. The interesting thing I was thinking was, obviously this didn't used to happen because players just weren't so rich. But now they've just got so much money that they all just think, well, it's just sort of something to do. But the randomness of Luka Modric to Swansea, it's like, on the One show when they pick out random celebrity and then, it's bird watching with Phil Tufnell. This is like they just put a club and a player in a bag and draw them out.
Well, it's not widely known, Max, but I had to write about this yesterday. I was doing my research. As a child growing up in a small Croatian village, Luka Modric slept under a Cyril the Swan duvet and had posters of Andy Legg and John Corforth plastered all over his bedroom wall. He's of a similar age to Lee Trundle, but I'm sure he's a big Trundle fan as well. It's just bizarre. We don't know how much he's invested. We don't know why he's invested. I think we probably missed a trick in not getting an Ellis James voice note to get his thoughts on the matter. But it's maybe it's Swansea just waving two fingers in the direction of Wrexham. So welcome to Swansea, Luka. Let's get the documentary made and
yeah.
It's weird. It was good, weird in a good way, an interesting way.
Thanks to Not the Top 20, our mates, for asking on their Monday pod when Modric last played at Swansea. It was New Year's Eve. Okay, there you go, Barry. Go on.
New Year's Eve 2011, 1-1 draw.
Yeah,
and he didn't score. That's the only time he played at Swansea.
Interesting, but it made such an impression, didn't it? Good luck to Luka. Maybe we'll ask Ellis for a voice note tomorrow of him just sort of laughing and being baffled. Sean Bon Jovi, son of John, I presume, says, "What's Mark having for Easter dinner?" Here we go. Classic Sunday roast. Have you thought about it?
I haven't given it that much thought. I mean, usually, it's lamb, isn't it, on Easter Sunday? I mean, I'll be disappointed. I must admit, Mrs. Langdon will be more involved than me in kind of deciding what it is that is put up on Easter Sunday. But I'll be massively disappointed if it's not a leg of lamb.
Right. I see how 1970s you just turn up and go, "What's for dinner?" And unless Mrs. Langdon has provided enough meat, you throw it out. If it's not roast, a leg of lamb, you just hurl it out of the window and go, "Make it again." Having
been to a pub owned by a sort of League One footballer, which is kind of the way it used to be before they started buying football clubs. But
Are you a mint sauce man, Mark?
Oh yes, yeah. I wouldn't live without it. Actually, we have it. I sometimes just stick it on random things. Any old Sunday dinner. Sometimes I think it. Maybe not pizza, but if there's a bit of meat on the plate, it wouldn't be that unusual for a bit of mint sauce. You just go flying on.
That sounds like the least needed "if" I've ever heard in the English language. But anyway, Simon says, "Hello, Max, Barry, and friends. First time writer, long time listener from Denmark. I'm going to marry the love of my life in June." In a vineyard in the southeastern part of the Czech Republic. Yes, apparently they make wine there. I hope that Barry would do the honour of blessing our marriage on your fine podcast. My future wife has a minor interest in football, but doesn't listen to the podcast yet. However, she often hears me laughing and smiling when I'm listening to you guys, when I'm either vacuuming or doing the laundry. She doesn't know that I'm asking for Barry's blessing, and she probably won't appreciate it as much as me, but I know she would ask everyone at the Guardian Football Weekly to pronounce the name of her countryman correctly. Thomas Souček, last name is pronounced Souček, an easy way of remembering it. Apparently they don't use the U sound when pronouncing his surname. Hoping you will use this in future pods, and if not, fair enough, I guess. Oh yeah, we can do Thomas Souček from now on. P.S. I asked my future wife, if I could ask a secret celebrity guest to our wedding, and I have approval from her side if my secret guest will sing a song during the ceremony. I hereby send a formal invitation to Mr. Glendenning and the promise of above average wine if he cares to make the journey. Many thanks for a lovely podcast. Keep up the good work. Best regards, Simon Mulgard. So there we are, Barry. Do you want to go to Simon's wedding with the love of his life? What song will you sing?
Well, my most recent singing performance was at karaoke when I did The Whole of the Moon by the Waterboys and Sonnet by the Verve.
Oh, God. Yes.
So I could do either of them. I also do a fairly decent Fairy Tale of New York, but that's more of a festive number and I'd need female accompaniment.
Right, okay.
For the Kirsty bits. I like that Simon, he will be a good husband insofar as he does the ironing and he does the vacuuming, but not a good husband insofar as he's asked for his blessing, or our blessing, mentioned his wife on numerous occasions, but not furnished us with her name. That's a bit weird. I already have a wedding to attend this summer, so I don't think I'll be able to make theirs. But he didn't have to promise above average wine. I mean, if I was free, just wine, any old piss would do.
Actually, yeah, below average would do. Yeah, I like one wedding a year for Barry. That's the good way to say it. It's one, I'm going to this one, and that's it. That'll do me for weddings every year.
On the subject of continental weddings, I've also been to one in Bordeaux in France, which I'd forgotten about. And if the person whose wedding it was heard that earlier, I do apologise. I had a great time.
I've also heard Barry sing Sam Fox's greatest hit, which I can't remember the title, but he had a good go at that quite recently.
Oh yeah,
Barry?
Yes, before a pod started.
Yeah.
Yes, Barry sang. He sang "Touch Me" by Samantha Fox. That's how we get.
Touch me, brackets, I want to feel your body. Brackets.
That's true.
And to be clear, I didn't just sing it apropos nothing. Someone was wondering what her hit was, and I was able to remember.
It does give the impression, why were we talking about Samantha Fox before the call, before the show began? Like, what's the way of explaining that?
I don't think we were being lads about it. She did crop up in conversation. I can't remember why.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. I just remember going to a wedding in Paris for my friend JB, and when the sort of, the wine at the tables would the waiters wouldn't have poured the wine for a second, and the French people would all just carry on chatting, and the English people would just start staring around the room going, what is going on? Why is there no wine in this glass? Just because we are the less cultured of the nations. But anyway, that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Lars.
Anytime, Max.
Thanks, Baz.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is The Guardian.